Hola chavos, welcome to a brand new episode of How to Learn Spanish. My name is Levi Flint. In today's episode of the podcast, we are going to talk about creating conversation scripts, okay? This is the step right before beginning to have real Spanish conversations. We're going to be doing these conversations with online teachers for a very reasonable price in the next episode. However, before we do that, we want to talk about creating scripts, planning, kind of giving ourselves a framework, a blueprint to be operating from, so we're not freaking out and feeling completely unprepared. But at this stage, you definitely have some Spanish skills. You still might be, if you've never had a real conversation before with a fluent or a native speaker, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed. So the goal for this is to eliminate all excuses and to give you, again, a framework for being able to dive into one of these online conversations and doing pretty well. Okay. So before we dive into this episode of the podcast, just a couple things. Number one, if you like this podcast, if you're learning something, if you're learning a lot, hopefully, and you want to work with me to become fluent in Spanish, check out my course, Fluency Hour. You can access that at fluencyhour.com, or the best way is usually over at Mexican Fluency, my main website. There you can access all of my courses, have links to all of my content, everything that you need for learning Español, okay? The audio you're about to hear is actually directly from my course, Fluency Hour, okay? It's one of the videos that is actually in the course. I decided rather than redoing this entire lesson, I guess, that I would take the audio from this particular video and just integrate it into this episode of the podcast. One thing I wanted to add with these conversation scripts that I'm going to be talking about creating is keep in mind that when you are having a one-on-one conversation class with your Spanish teacher online, keep in mind that you can simply give them this script and you guys can start out the class literally just reading from the script. Just reading from the script. Okay, this is going to be it sounds really simple, very, very simple, but this is your script that you're creating. And so you guys can be going back and forth and just practicing that way. Think of it as riding a bike with training wheels on. All right, very, very simple. No real balance is required. You just kind of get on the bike and you just hold on, pedal, 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 pedal. Very simple. It's a similar thing with doing your first online conversation class, or maybe 2 or 3 first classes with these training wheels on. It's going to give you a lot of confidence. And again, one of the most important things is just cutting the excuses and just getting to it and just making sure that it happens. That's going to put you above I would say 99%, 98% of all people out there who are learning Spanish. They actually never really speak the language. They never attempt to. And a lot of this is because they're scared and because they don't know who to talk to or how to do it, or they feel awkward. So this will cut through a lot of the excuses, a lot of the fluff, and just get you taking action and having that first set of conversations. Okay, so let's dive in to the audio. I'm going to start that right about now. Enjoy. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I hope you like this one. It's time to begin preparing for conversation. Okay, so it's time to begin. Finally, it's time to begin to have a real conversation. There are people out there, there are teachers, gurus out there in the Spanish teaching, language learning world that are going to say, no, you should be having conversations from day one. Maybe you want to listen to them. Maybe you want to just dive in head first and have a conversation without really knowing anything. For me personally, I've tried both. And what works the best for me is to first follow my advice with my methodology, and you build your foundation, right? You're not taking years to do it though. All of this that we have talked about, this should be happening within a month, 2 months, 3 months max. All of this stuff we're doing in 3 months, okay? So now, once we have built a foundation, a competence in Español, in Spanish, we want to definitely, I would say, at the 3 month mark, it's definitely time to start speaking, okay? It's definitely time because you have had time to get experience. You have had a lot of opportunities to build lots of skills. You've done dozens, hundreds of Pomodoros at this point, hopefully hundreds of Pomodoros. You have built a foundation. So the first step in preparing, or the first step in getting ready for having a real conversation, and this can be with an online teacher, a tutor, face-to-face tutor, or you're going to a country where Spanish is spoken. The first step, in my opinion, is to focus and prepare for an online class, an online conversation, okay? And to do that, the way to prepare for this is very simple. We are going to do what we call script building. So you're going to build scripts, or at least I would say 1, 2 to 3 mini scripts of what you're going to say, like as if you're an actor, getting ready to shoot a movie or a TV show. You're going to practice, you're going to build and practice your script. All right, so let's check it out right here. Okay, so this is an example of a script, and this is a very basic, simple example of a script. Keep in mind that, like I said, we should have multiple scripts that we're going to create and study and learn. And of course, you can take this to your class. So especially in an online class, it's so easy to have a script right there in front of you as you're practicing and saying hello to your teacher or your conversation partner. You're practicing with them. In a face-to-face setting, it's a little more awkward, but it can still be done. So this is an example of your script. So let's say it's your very first class ever. When you're preparing the script, you can use the knowledge. You should have a lot of knowledge at this point. You can use your own knowledge. You can use a dictionary. You can use Google Translate, but be careful. Be careful. You can use all these things to research and to prepare your script. Make sure it's accurate. Make sure it's lined up. And create something like this. So your very first class, you would want to say, Hola, me llamo. So, hey, my name is, Hola, me llamo Levi, or Levi. And you would want to ask, what's your name? ¿Y tú? ¿Cómo te llamas? What's your name? You could say something like, Tengo 35 años. I'm 35. How old are you? ¿Cuántos años tienes? Okay. ¿Dónde vives? You could ask, where do you live? And if your teacher asks you, where do you live? ¿Dónde vives tú? You could say something like, I was raised in, or I grew up in, crecí en Alabama. Crecí en California. But now I live in, pero ahora vivo en Texas, for example, right? So you could say, but now I live here. And you can create a much longer, more in-depth script for your first class. And then, you would want to create a script. You want to create other scripts as well. Maybe you want to talk about a different subject. And you could tell your conversation teacher that you want to talk about a different subject. And you could put second class, we're going to talk about my childhood. Maybe you guys are going to speak about things that happened when you're a kid. You're going to use the past. You're going to talk about the past, right? And so you could very easily create your own script. And you could prepare a couple things that you're pretty sure will come up, things that you want to say. You could say, for example, when I was a kid, cuando era niño, right? You can give that to yourself there. You could say, I liked to play. Me gustaba jugar con. I like to play with my brother, my friends. Okay, and you can keep that going. Keep building your script and have multiple scripts about different topics. And this is a great crutch, a great tool to help you feel a lot more confident when you actually have your class, your conversation practice. When that moment comes, you'll have scripts that you have written for yourself to study and memorize. You'll have scripts as well to bring with you to the class. And of course, after a while, you won't have to use scripts anymore. Your Spanish skills will be so strong, and you'll feel so confident and have much more experience that you don't need to have this crutch to rely on. But in my experience, having a script, it's a great idea. It really is. It works. It will help you out. And at this point, you should be using whatever you can to just keep pushing it forward. Remember back to the video at the very beginning of the course where we talk about I+1. So input plus 1 means that you always want to be at your current level, turned up one little notch. So think of it as a knob, and you're going to turn that knob one click up above where you're currently at. And that is going to greatly increase your chances of making sure that you continue to improve. Because the worst thing you can do is remain stagnant. I+1, turn the knob one click every time you're feeling comfortable. Keep moving up. Keep moving up. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it's giving you some ideas and a little bit of confidence about how to proceed forward using all of these things that you've been learning, kind of package it together into a series or a script or a series of scripts that you can take to your very first couple of online classes, sharing them with your teacher, and guys are just reading them off together, just practicing. And in time, this is going to become very second nature, and you're going to begin having online classes where you are going to simply, just having normal conversation, improving it, okay? So just like we do in real life. So I think this is a great step for you to take. Highly recommend you do not skip this step. If you like this podcast, guys, if you're getting something out of it, please, by all means, feel free to leave a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts. Subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. You can always watch these videos on YouTube. I'm posting these. It's not like amazing production quality. I'm just here in my office right now. But I do like to occasionally, with certain episodes of the podcast, I like to share my screen and show a little bit of what I'm doing here on my end at the same time. So sometimes that is very helpful. So make sure to check that out if you haven't. Again, it is at my Mexican Fluency YouTube channel. You can check that out. I have other videos and content there as well. That is all. Very last thing, I have to plug my course, Fluency Hour. If you are trying to learn Spanish, if you want you want to work with me on how to learn Spanish and also get you to actually be taking action on a daily basis over the course of an entire month, check out my course Fluency Hour. That is at fluencyhour.com. You can also just go to mexicanfluency.com. Very easy to access all of the additional information. Bueno, muchas gracias de nuevo. Espero verlos muy pronto y que tengan un muy buen día. All right. See you very soon.